Misty Molloy is the founder and co-creative director of CoCreative Interiors, a design firm based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Misty began serving clients on the side in late 2019 while working a full-time corporate career. 3 years later, what started small has grown into a thriving six-figure business. Creative Interiors fills the gap between e-design and full-service design. Her team guides clients through the decision process and provides a purchasing plan, then takes them across the finish line with done-for-you styling to pull it all together. A creative risk taker, she's known for helping clients push their boundaries and using color, pattern, print, and texture to develop unique layered spaces. Missy, I'm so glad that you found time to join us today. I know you're super busy. But as you know, and all of you know watching, we're trying to talk to CEOs who have completed the program, who are working with virtual assistants across a range of industries, right? Like you've seen all the coaches, but what about all the other people? So that's why Misty's here today. She did complete the program. She's an interior designer, and I'm so glad you're here. Can you share with us, Misty, some of the ways your VA helps you in your business?
Well, we only have 30 minutes, right? So we started off by having her manage a lot of the admin tasks that go along with client management and project management. So tracking purchase orders, putting together client welcome packets, just all of the things that you have to do to ensure that clients have a seamless and enjoyable experience. And once we got into the habit of having her complete some of the more basic day-to-day tasks, if you will, we dove into a lot of bigger type projects that were things that I had always wanted to do, but just didn't have the bandwidth to do. And it gave her the creativity and ownership over some of the different projects that she was handling as well. So it was nice for both of us. So we had done a project planner, and she put that together for me in Canva. And then we turned that into our lead magnet, and she set that up in my email system. So all kinds of things. I have been working on what's it called? One room redesign. I think that's what it's called. She's been handling most of it. And she put together the schedule for what that would look like. So you have to post once every week for 8 weeks. This is what you're going to do on week 1 all the way through. This is what we're going to do through week 8. And then I just went in and kind of filled in the different parts of the puzzle based on that template that she put together for me. One room challenge. That's what it's called.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, lots of different things. If there are any specifics you'd like me to go into, I'd be happy to do that.
Well, the more specific, the better. I mean, the thing is Anika and I are going to do this tomorrow. So we're going to go and we don't have a script. We're just going to chat about all of the most minutia to the high level stuff, just because I don't know if you remember if you were like this before you hired your first virtual assistant, but there is this feeling of I don't really know what I would give them. I just don't think I have enough tasks to keep them busy. Did you have any of that before you hired, or did you know that you had a mountain of stuff to?
I would say it was a mix between the two. For a lot of business owners, you're so in the weeds that it can be hard to, I think, stop and really catalog the number of tasks that need to be completed on a regular basis. So I knew that I was overwhelmed, and I knew that having someone step in and help me with a lot of the day-to-day minutia would be a game changer for me. It was a matter of just sitting down and figuring out what that looked like. And I also found that, your program is so great, in terms of laying things out step by step. My one advice would be that for those of you who do choose to go through the program is to do exactly what Jen tells you. There's no reason to veer off the path. And as we walked through that process, just to get started, that's the hardest part, is getting started. Once I got started and started going through and figuring out what are the things that bug me the most. I hate cataloging receipts. It drives me crazy, but I buy a lot of stuff for clients. And so I have to go through and I have to log it in my bookkeeping software. I have to save it per client so that I can analyze client projects from what we spent and what we make from a profitability standpoint. I have to keep up an inventory list of what we have in stock so that I know what we have, but also, like, I'm just doing taxes right now. So having an inventory report is necessary for me to send in with my taxes. I mean, all that kind of stuff, that seemingly one thing of cataloging a receipt, like saving a receipt where it needs to go, snowballed into all of those tasks that I didn't even think about initially.
Well,
so it's like starting with those small things, and then it ends up having offshoots that come along with those things.
what can you tell us the process for how you do your receipts? I'm super curious.
Yeah. So right now I do scannable. I take a picture of the receipt with scannable if it's a paper receipt. And if it's an email, it's just there in my inbox, and she'll go through and find it and pull it down so that she can do whatever she needs to do with it. And then once she has the receipts, we have a naming convention. So she helped me establish a filing system for our Google Drive so that everything is super easy to find. So we name them appropriately for the date, who it was purchased for, and the primary article that we purchased, or whatever that would have been, whether it was like a styling expense or an office expense, that kind of thing. After she names it, she saves it to the appropriate folder in Google Drive. She attaches the receipt in QuickBooks to the expense, like matches those. And then she logs it in inventory, and then she will tag it based on either what we consider like styling inventory, meaning it's not for a specific client. It's just something that we keep on hand for whatever project we might need it for. So she categorizes it appropriately based on that information. And then anytime something is taken out of inventory, she goes back and cleans all of that up as well. But those are like the primary steps of what she does with the receipts. The nice thing is they come in my inbox and I don't have to see them again. She files it away. It's amazing.
Okay. I know I can hear the collective like drool happening in everybody's like right now, because that alone, like, first of all, like that is 1,000% the kind of task I never, ever want to do. And it would be the first thing that I would outsource to get that off my plate. And I honestly feel like if that's all you did, if that is all you did, and you did not give any other tasks, and you had a VA who just did that for you, don't you think it would be worth it? Like,
and I think what we don't realize until you really get into it is how much it, you might think to yourself, like, oh, it takes me 5 minutes to download that receipt and save it where it needs to go. I mean, just for, step one. But it's completely beyond that because of the mental capacity that it's taken away from me having to even think about it. Like, before I would snooze it until I was ready to go back and deal with it, or I would save it to a folder until I was ready to go back and deal with it. And then it would pile up, and there would always be this nagging feeling in the back of my head that I needed to go and do it. And half the time, or more than half the time, I would get behind. So there was this constant stress around something that is so simple. And I just didn't have the time to do it, or quite frankly, I just didn't want to do it. So I would put it off because I had no interest in doing it. So yes, it saves me the actual time, but it also saves me the time from stressing about it and thinking about what I should be doing.
And interrupting your flow, like,
yeah,
you don't have to interrupt your flow. Does your VA do any buying for you?
She does. And that took me a long time to let go of that, because as you can imagine, there are a lot of mistakes to be made and a lot of money to be lost if that's not done correctly. So we started off slowly, and she helped me create the process for what our purchase orders needed to have in order for them to be complete. And same thing with the naming convention. So she set up several different templates for purchase orders based on where we were purchasing the item, whether it was a retail item or a trade item. They have different information based on what that needs. And then slowly but surely, I would give her some of them that were pretty straightforward, and there was not a lot, like ordering a sofa that has fabric and way more specifications is one thing than ordering like a piece of furniture that doesn't have any customizations to it.
Right.
So we started off with the basics of this is the non-custom piece. This is what you need to do. And she would do those. And then eventually we got into her ordering everything from the top down. I still look over every single purchase order that we put together because it is such an important thing. I mean, like I could lose thousands of dollars if something isn't done correctly. Plus end up with a sofa I don't want.
Right.
So I still look over them, but again, just having her be the one to put them all together. And then I found that it actually has helped us reduce mistakes because, sometimes if you're editing something and you reread it 20,000 times and you don't see it because you've been staring at it all of that time. But if someone else does it and you read it for the first or second time, you're reading it with fresh eyes. And so you catch things that I find that that's happened quite a bit.
Yeah.
Where she'll send me stuff and I'm like, this isn't clear. And so I'm reading it even from the vendor perspective of, if I were the vendor, would I know exactly what I'm supposed to order based on this purchase order? Or are there details that are missing? So it's been helpful for that as well.
Are there any big shifts that you can speak of that, right off the top of your head that bringing a VA has brought to your business or your life?
Truly just the peace of mind has made a tremendous difference. I'm a mom. I have two boys who are 8 and 10, and they are very active and still very needy. And being able to disconnect and spend the time with them and with my husband has been a game changer. And I know that I can leave and not have to worry about something. The VA is there to answer emails, just to follow up with clients if they need anything. And they've been responded to. So I don't have to worry about that as much. And she keeps me on track. So there are some times when she is keeping me in line, where she'll have said, this is due, or this is upcoming. Are you on track to finish this? And sometimes I have to admit I'm not. But just having her as my backup it's just been a game changer in that sense. Like I used to spend my nights, going back to the receipt thing, I would spend my days doing my actual work and the stuff that no one else can do, like actually putting together the designs, for example, or the non-fun stuff like taxes that really I should be the one doing. And I would spend my evenings on the sofa instead of hanging out and watching TV or just spending time with my husband. I would be logging receipts. So it's given me that part of my life back and honestly made my business enjoyable. And I think business owners have a tendency to become all consumed with their business. And so many of us went into it so that we could have the flexibility, coming from corporate. Like I hated that I had to be within this hours that they set. And I'm like, well, if I can do my job in 6 hours, why do I have to be here for 8 staring at my computer screen for no reason?
Right.
But then I found myself working way more than I used to, but it was within my own company. And so making that switch for a while, I was like, I'm just going to go back to my job, because if I'm going to have this much stress and I don't really have any extra time off, then why am I doing this? So having that switch really made all the difference. It made me like my business again. This is my 3rd year in business. So it was probably right around the 1.5 year mark that my VA came into the business to help. And like, it was at that point that I either had to make the decision to keep going with it or to shut it down. And happily, I did not shut it down.
I know there are so many people who are just nodding their heads in agreement right now. And it's so relatable because like, that's exactly where I was too. I'm sure that's where a lot of people are right now, where we don't love our business anymore because you realize you just left one job to get the worst boss of all in the world, the most unrelenting, meanest boss, which is you. It's like we're not going to give ourselves a break. We're not going to, So thank you very much for sharing that. What would you what would you say to people who are not just on the fence about joining this program, but like who might be on the fence about hiring a virtual assistant, like maybe not feeling ready yet?
There's no good time to get started.
So true.
There just is no good time. And in a lot of ways, I think starting earlier in your business can be helpful because you have someone there to help you build those processes from the ground up instead of having to backtrack. And I would have gotten off the ground a lot faster, I think, had I had someone else helping me with all of those day-to-day tasks. And like I said, once you get started, it kind of snowballs. And you can learn to work with your VA and figure out what it is that they like to do. So when I hired my VA, there were non-negotiables that she just had to be willing to do. So receipts were one of those. Purchase orders were another one of those. She actually had an interest in design. And at one point, I taught her how to create floor plans in my design software. And it's pretty straightforward once you know how to use the system. But she was the one who came to me and said, hey, like, I actually have always found this interesting. Would you be willing to teach me? Heck yeah. So I started taking measurements and I would send her the measurements along with the photos, and she would put the floor plan in place for me. And if there are existing pieces of furniture that we're working with, which happens actually quite a bit with my clients, I would say, here's a picture of the item. These are the dimensions of this particular piece. And she will go in my software and find a piece that looks like what she has, or she'll take that picture and like actually upload that into my design software. So it's the actual piece from the client's home and incorporate that. So then when it's time for me to go and put the design plan together, it's all ready. And I just kind of like drop stuff in.
Okay.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Oh my God.
And sometimes, like, depending on what it is, I will actually have her look for items. And so if I can communicate the vision for the design, like we're working on a client's laundry room right now and we're looking for wallpaper. This would have been something that she could have done, would have been, hey, I'm looking for blue wallpaper that has a small print, most likely going to be from this line or this line based on this client's aesthetic. Can you go through and select your top 8 favorite designs? And we go through and I narrow it down from there. Very rarely did I have to go back and actually select something different than what she had put. And if it was, I would say, you're on the right track, but this is really more of what I had in mind. And the second time around, she'd nail it. So once she did that and we narrowed it down, then we got her to the point where she could actually pull that together in the client design. And we have software where she puts the picture in there, logs all the information. It creates a PDF and a client link. So we send that to the client and say, hey, here's your wallpaper options. Please let us know which one you like the best, and we'll go from there. And she just kind of does it. And I just sign off on it, which is great.
Okay, that's humongous, Misty.
Yeah.
Like you've developed a junior designer. She probably loves it. Yeah, because it's creative and she's learning so much. That is really amazing. It reminds me of my cousin who's an architect, and he works with a VA who is proficient in AutoCAD or whatever it is they use. Mm-hmm. And so he's a solo agency, but he's able to see like 5 clients for every one he was able to deal with before. Mm-hmm. And his clients think he's like, he never sleeps, because he does the measurements or whatever, hands it over while he's asleep. Everything's getting drawn up on CAD or whatever. And he wakes up and he's got 5, whatever you call it, designs. So I just think that's amazing and a perfect example of how to really make space for yourself with a virtual assistant. Wowee. Congrats.
And it's really nice because it gives her some sense of ownership without just being an order taker. And like I said, I think the way that I started and the way I recommend starting is to find the things that you want to get off your plate ASAP because they just drive you bananas. And the ones that also take up the majority of your time, but you don't need to be doing. And then once you get that kind of stuff figured out, then I got to the point where I'm like, okay, the majority of the stuff that I needed off my plate has been taken off. What other kinds of things would you be interested in doing? And that's kind of how we went down that rabbit hole that turned into something that I never would have imagined that I could have let that go. Now, like if I have to drop a floor plan, I hate doing it. And I didn't used to be like that, but I got spoiled after a while. So that goes back to your question of for those people who aren't ready, I guarantee you there are things that you can get off your plate if you just even start making a list of the things you don't like doing, first of all. But then after that, the longer you work with someone and the more you figure out what they enjoy doing and asking for their their feedback on what they might enjoy doing, it opens up a whole other realm of possibilities. So you can end up having her do things that her or him do things that you might have never considered before.
Yes. Yes. I'm nodding because that's exactly sort of how we developed as well. Like things ended up growing from original what were routine sort of admin tasks, and then they things just started to develop and develop and develop, and then now, I mean, Nika could really take over my business and no one would miss me. So that's really the truth. So all right, this has just been great. Thank you so much for this, y'all. If you want to connect with Misty, her website is CoCreativeInteriors.com, and her Instagram is the CoCreative.design. If you want to check out her work there, and her VA's work, I guess, who's probably doing some of her social media. Is there anything anything I didn't ask you about, or any last words you want to share before we conclude?
I think the biggest thing is to be prepared, and, to say that you just have to get started, yes, is one thing, but it does take an investment of time upfront, and you just have to know that it will pay dividends. When I was making my initial Trello board for my trial week, I put together like a full 40-hour work week, basically. And I was up one night until like 2:30 putting it all together because I had people starting trial week and I needed to have it finished. But I wanted to make sure that what I was giving them would benefit the business. So even if they didn't end up working with me, I was getting something for the time that they were investing in the money that I was paying for those projects. But also I really wanted to get a good sense of what they could do so that the person I hired was a good fit. And if you don't prepare, you're not, I don't think, going to get out of it what you have the potential to get out of it. So preparing for the trial week, but then also being prepared to spend time with your virtual assistant once they come on board is imperative. In the beginning, like I was guilty of just firing stuff off at her because I was still in the weeds and felt like I was drowning. And I was very upfront with her and just said, look, this is going to be a little bit crazy for the first several weeks because I'm still trying to get my bearings as well. But it is important to me that you feel confident and comfortable with what you're doing. I will answer questions as quickly as I can. And we established a weekly meeting schedule where we just spent an hour kind of catching up to make sure that she had everything she needed to feel comfortable. So it's not one of those things that if you follow the course and get your VA, it just magically happens. But the 10 hours I put into training her, I mean, I can't even think of the number of hours that it saved me in time. So that'd be my biggest piece of advice. Just be ready, but it's worth it.
I think that's a great piece of advice, which ties right into what you said, is that there's never really a good time. And you did this when your hair was on fire and there was a lot of chaos. And because here's the thing, at the rates that you're starting at, you really can afford to just sort of secure someone. Do you know what I mean? Like, okay, we went through this process. I know you're the right person. I still have some stuff I got to clean up on my end. It's not going to be ideal right now, but just sort of like hang tight. You can afford for them to hang tight at these rates. And that's kind of a luxury that you can afford, that you wouldn't be able to do that in a different scenario. So, and that's and I just love that you shared that, because that is like real life right there, to some degree. We're going through that right now with you missed it earlier, Misty, when I was talking about, we just brought 2 full-time VAs onto the team in the middle of a launch, in the middle of my accelerator program, in the middle of us just purchasing a new house that we didn't expect to. I mean, I'm just like, it's like, seriously, there's too much going on. So it is sort of like hang tight. Nika is managing them, but Nika is also in the middle of launch. So, so it's not the most ideal time, but it's fine. It's gonna be fine. We have, fortunately we do have systems in place and we've got work for them to do, but that's just real life. Nobody all of a sudden, the clouds don't part and the bluebirds don't come and, grab your hair and sing, sing Cinderella songs. Like, it's just going to be rough a little bit, but if you don't make time for this now, you'll never have time for anything. So, all right, Misty, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm going to, and again, you guys, you can check her out at CoCreativeInteriors.com, and her Instagram handle is CoCreativeInteriors.